Before I start this video, I just want to say that this video is fair use, so all the media used in this video is a criticism review in a transformative way. All the information I present is public information, everything else is a legit joke or just my opinion. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the snowstorm that happened in Texas, and I can't really describe the effects of what happened, so I'm just going to show you some videos.
My landlord asked me to keep the water dripping to keep the pipes from freezing here in Texas. I put the towel to mute the drip. I noticed the towel started to change color. This is my drinking water. How is this okay? It does not feel right after drinking it. I had to because I ran out of bottled water.
So I guess the best way that I could personally describe it is it was cold. But a lot of people were saying that Texans were overreacting to the situation. But the thing is, like, snowstorms aren't like some cute and quirky little adventures for like homeless people that were out in the streets. And it's not fun for the rest of the people living there who are living in houses that weren't built for weathers like this. Obviously, you can see in one of the videos that like the roof was like caving in, some systems stopped working, the water pipes were frozen. So a lot of people didn't have running water, which resulted in some people going outside, scooping up like the ice and like the snow and like melting it to drink. So obviously a lot of people were struggling during that time, and the mayor of Texas decided to post on his Facebook account saying, "Let me hurt some feelings while I have a minute. No one owes you or your family anything, nor is it the local government's responsibility to support you during times like this. Sink or swim, it's your choice. The city and county, along with power providers or any other service, owes you nothing. I'm sick and tired of people looking for a damn handout. If you don't have electricity, you step up and come up with a game plan to keep your family warm and safe. If you have no water, you deal without and think outside of the box to survive and supply water to your family. If you are sitting at home in the cold because you have no power and are sitting there waiting for someone to come rescue you because you're lazy is direct result of your raising. Only the strong will survive and the weak will perish. God has given us the tools to support ourselves in times like this. This is sadly a product of a socialist government where they feed people to believe that the few will work and others will become dependent for handouts. Am I sorry that you have been dealing without electricity and water? Yes, but I'll be damned if I'm going to provide for anyone that is capable of doing it for themselves. We have lost sight of those in need and those that take advantage of the system and mesh them into one group. Bottom line, quit crying and looking for a handout. Get off your ass and take care of your own family. Don't be a part of the problem, be a part of the solution." Obviously that post was deleted, but he replaced it with this one. "Or I've sat back and watched all this escalating and have tried to keep my mouth shut. I won't deny for 1 minute what I said in my post this morning. Believe me when I say that many of the things I said were taken out of context, and some of which were said without putting much thought into it. I would never want to hurt the elderly or anyone that is in true need of help to be left to fend for themselves. I was only making the statement that those folks who are too lazy to get up and fend for themselves but are capable should not be dealt a handout. I apologize for the wording and some of the phrases that were used. I had already turned in my resignation and had not signed up to run for mayor again on the deadline that was February 12th. I spoke some of this out of the anger that the city and county was catching for situations which were out of their control. Please understand, if I had to do it again, I would have just kept my words to myself, and if I did say them, I would have used better wording and been more descriptive. The anger and harassment you have caused my wife and family is so undeserved. My wife was laid off her job based off the association people gave to her and the business she worked for. She is a good person and she was only defending me. But to have her fired from her job over things I said out of context is so horrible. I admit there are things that are said all the time that I don't agree with. But I would never harass you or your family to the point that they would lose their livelihood such as a form of income. I ask that you each understand I never meant to speak for Colorado City or Mitchell County. I was speaking as a citizen as I am not the mayor anymore. I apologize for the wording and ask that you please not harass myself or my family anymore. Threatening our lives with comments and messages is a horrible thing to have to wonder about. I won't share any of those messages from those names as I feel they know who they are and hope after they see this they will retract the hateful things they have said." Whether or not you believe that he resigned before his first post is just based on whether or not you want to take his word for it, because there is no proof that he resigned before or after. I don't know, I just feel like that was kind of like a stupid thing to say regardless of whether or not you agree with him. I personally don't, because regardless of whether or not they were able to fend for themselves in your opinion, they were still like in danger, or at the very least in potential danger. Like, y'all were just assuming that they were able to wrap themselves in like 5 layers of clothing to stay warm enough to survive. Your job as somebody in government is to keep the people safe. So like what were you planning to do? Like what did you become mayor for? Your number one job is to keep the people safe, and I would argue that the second one is to keep them happy. If the majority of the people were obviously struggling, you failed to keep them happy by posting that. And obviously you were failing to keep them safe because you obviously weren't doing anything. And that may have been because you resigned, but like, was it really? Bottom line is, if you want to be somebody that is in control of stuff like these and like policies that affect everyone, you have to care about everyone. And it's clear that he just like kind of doesn't. The next thing I want to talk about is James Charles, because he recently posted this big paragraph to Twitter which says, "Trigger warning, grooming and pedophilia. There's a video going around about me on TikTok and Twitter of a guy calling me a groomer, and I want to address it right away. The accusation that I have groomed this person is completely false. Last week, I came across someone on my Instagram Explore page, saw he followed me, and added him on Snapchat. The next morning, I woke up to several snaps from this person being excited I added him back, saying he loved me and also lewd photos of himself in the shower. I asked how old he was, and right away he told me he was 18, so I started flirting back. In the excitement of meeting someone I thought could be potentially great, I didn't ask for a copy of his ID or passport. It's now clear, based on the video he uploaded, he was taking photos of me with another device, and had an ulterior motive from the beginning. Later in the day, he said a few things that made me question the validity of his original age answer, and when I asked him to confirm his age once again, he admitted he was 16. I told him I was really uncomfortable and apologized for flirting, but he insisted on continuing talking, saying it could be a little secret. He's a fan of mine and would never tell anyone. I told him I wasn't okay with this. He started getting upset. At this point, I unfriended him. We haven't spoken since. I'm not victim blaming him or victimizing myself either. Simply sharing what happened, and what happened was not okay. After false allegations like this in the past, I would never knowingly engage with anyone underage and put my life on the line for a few Snapchats. Because of situations like this, instead of taking someone's word for it, I will now ask to see the ID or passport of every guy I have a conversation with. And some responses to that original tweet included, "I am so tired of you being able to get away with this. You've abused your fame to solicit sexual actions from fans multiple times. You know they're vulnerable to you because they're fans. And when they speak about it, you weaponize your following against them simply by saying," and I couldn't find the rest of the tweet, but I'm assuming it's about him saying that they lied about their age, or that like they were obviously out to get him from the start. And Kendall said, "James, he has his TikTok account posted to his Instagram highlights and it clearly says he's 16. Now when I first read this, I was like, nobody's going to just like go through everyone's Instagram highlights, especially if one of them is clearly just for like self-promotion of a different social media. But I'll get into that more as we get into it more. Gorgeous Gal said, "You're friends with Nikita Dragon, who was 25 and was attracted to a minor and waited for him to turn 18. That's predatory behavior and you know that. So I wouldn't be surprised if you were a predator too. You already done shit like this in the past." There's not much defense you could give against that. Like, if somebody was friends with somebody who was racist, like in my mind, I think they're comfortable with racism, so they're probably racist. So in this situation, like if you're friends with somebody who's very predatory, also Nikita Dragon is friends with Tony Lopez, who, you know, did stuff with minors. So there's just like a whole chain of like predatory behavior, like both of the Lopez brothers, Nikita Dragon, James is obviously very comfortable with that, and it's like hard to imagine somebody who isn't like that being comfortable with that. Liv said, "Responded to this faster than you partying and collabing with multiple people, whatever. Next." I know this isn't entirely related to like this situation, but I just wanted to like insert it into here because like it makes sense. Like, yeah, he didn't respond to any of that because he didn't have a response to that, because he was in the wrong. He's responding to this because I think that in his head, he's convinced himself that since he was told that this person is 18, and this person was like obviously out to like catch him from the start, that he's like almost the victim in the situation. D'Angelo Wallace said, "Sorry if it seems like I'm shouting into the void, but my main point is this James Charles situation is so clearly predatory. Man trades porn with child who looks up to him, claims he didn't know his age again." Which is what I was talking about. Like, you had this big scandal in 2019 about you being a sexual predator to straight men and men under the age of 18, and you couldn't do the bare minimum. Like, at this point, the bare minimum isn't asking for his age, because everyone does that. The bare minimum was trying to prove that he was actually 18 as much as you could. Which brings me back to that tweet before, like, yes, like a normal person, if it was anyone else, like this would be like a first time thing, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. Like, nobody's going to go through those highlights to like try and find an age. But when it's James Charles, like, you have a history of being accused of this stuff, so you have this like thing attached to your name. Why would you not try and do a little bit of research to prove that he isn't a minor? Like, as a regular person, like, I wouldn't just go through somebody's highlights being like, are they 18, are they 18? But like, if I was James Charles, I probably would, because if they just lied about their age, which they could easily do, I'm going to have another like predatory scandal on my name. Jack said, People are acting like this is the first time allegations like this have come up. Regardless, it's still fucking weird to sext fans. Danny said, I think what bothers me most is the fact he clearly used someone who told him they were a big fan of his to his advantage for sexual favors. Knowing an age isn't the problem here. Mia said, I think it's not impossible the kid was trying to set him up because that's what happened before too. But even still, it would be predatory to flirt like that with a random fan, especially one so young. Even if you were 18, that's so young. And somebody said, yeah, I agree, to be honest. I'm on the fence because the past ones were setups, but also there's a power imbalance with fan and creator. But if this was fake, that could also be a lie. But also he needs to stop trying to date random guys he meets online. This is so periodic, it's hard to defend, to be honest. I don't know James Charles, so I didn't know this was a recurring thing, but this specific situation, I'm just like, come on man. This is the age of technology, and with as big as your name is and what happens in 2019, you didn't think so far as to ask for proof of age? Lucas came in defense of James Charles, saying that the 16-year-old had bad intentions, knowing that James was 21. He also had another device to record James's Snapchats back. Even if he had ID, it could be fake. It's very common nowadays. It's unfortunate, but I think James is in the right. And he got a lot of responses, including, nope, he was in a previous situation. He's a celebrity. He knows what is on the internet may or may not be true. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. He shouldn't be attempting to have any sort of flirting or hooking up with fans regardless of age. It's a bad look. The power dynamic is off. But they were still 16. At one point, accountability comes into play for the adult who continuously finds themselves in these situations. Catching a predator is a bad intention. Chris Hansen might hit you up next. The 16-year-old had his age listed on his Instagram. Had James checked, he'd have seen he's 16 but refuses to check for proof of age. He'd also avoid all this if he stopped going after fans, but he refuses to do that too. He's far from being in the right. So you're telling me that if you had multiple people try to frame you as a predator over the span of 2 years, including 4 in the past 6 months, one being a 14-year-old, you wouldn't even bother to check the person sending you lewd social media accounts first? His age was in his bio. And somebody else came through with what I believe is a weaker argument, but they said, nobody uses fake IDs anymore. Literally nobody. People steal now, and there are other forms of identification. In my personal opinion, if anyone shows proof they're under the age of 21, James doesn't need to talk to them anymore. To which Lucas, the guy who defended James Charles, said, they literally do use fake IDs. It's very common. And I just find it interesting how this was the only response that he responded to. Like, he made his tweet, and then everyone started, like, responding to his, and this was the only one that he ended up replying to. Because, again, it is the weakest argument, in my personal opinion, under what he said. And this was the easiest response that he could give. He couldn't acknowledge the fact that James has had scandals like this in the past. He should have been more careful. Regardless of age, there's still a power dynamic between fans and creators. The last thing that I want to talk about is Myanmar. For those of you who don't know, there was a military coup going on after the elected officials were essentially, I guess, taken away, and they were claiming that there was a fraud that occurred within, like, the voting. So people started protesting because obviously they wanted the people that they elected to be in power. And also because they had, like, cut off some, like, social medias, and, like, they were trying to, like, limit and restrict how much they could, like, talk to other people about what's happening. So they started protesting, and then all social medias and internet was just completely cut off, so they had no contact with the outside world. And again, they were, like, peacefully protesting, but then they started getting tear gassed, they got shot with rubber bullets, people have gotten, like, injured. I'm pretty sure people have died, like, at least one person has died, to my knowledge. And just recently, Myanmar's UN ambassador was fired for urging the United Nations to reverse the coup by any means necessary. Kyo Mo-tun has been removed from his position, according to Myanmar state television, one day after he called for the strongest possible action from the international community to immediately end the military coup. During his emotional appeal, Kyo Mo-tun raised a 3-finger salute in solidarity with protesters who have been taken to the streets for several weeks. They took away the elected officials, they were violently fighting back against peaceful protesters, and then they fired the UN ambassador for being against it. I don't know, I just feel like the situation just isn't getting better, and I don't know, like, what can be done at this point. But again, similarly to my last video, there will be a link in the description down below where you could donate, so if you can do that, then donate whatever amount you're comfortable with. And that's all I have for you guys today. So if you liked this video, if you liked me, make sure to like and subscribe. If you didn't like me, make sure to get in contact with my teachers, because I bet you'll have a lot of comment, and make sure to stay safe and stay hydrated.